All right, everyone, we have a monumental shift within voting demographics. The Democratic Party is literally hemorrhaging voters right now. And I have a feeling based on Trump's relatively high approval, certainly a lot higher than Joe Biden at most moments, that trend arguably will continue. Now, we do have a war going on at the moment. It kind of depends on Trump's reaction to that. He has shown, generally speaking, I mean, he's pro-Israel, but at the same time shows hesitance towards getting into international entanglements. So when he says, let's make an Iran deal, I think that strikes the right tone with many people, although I would just say abandon the region entirely. But we'll see how he reacts to that because core MAGA does not want a war. It's not what he was voted in to do. But now it looks like immigrant voters, actually, are the latest voting bloc to show an enormous swing towards the GOP. For example, there is roughly a 40% swing. Now, they're kind of misinterpreting the numbers, link in the description archived, of course, because it doesn't add up to 100%. So the swing is smaller than they're suggesting. But there is a significant double-digit swing between 2020 and 2024 with regards to voters that were born outside of the United States. So people who immigrated generally to the United States. Now, some of them, of course, are naturalized. American goes out of the country and they father a child or they get pregnant or something, and so that child, in many cases gains dual citizenship and shit like that. And so the child might be conceived of as an immigrant, even though technically they're a natural born American. That being said, most of these people simply immigrated from abroad. They were on a student visa, they joined the military, work visa, something like that, and they became eventually a citizen. These people have typically voted lopsidedly for Democrats. But because the Democrats have screwed up so bad and don't understand the difference between a legal and illegal citizen, and continue to denigrate the legal ones, which can actually vote, by the way, by conflating them with somebody who yesterday wandered across the Rio Grande and asking them, who are in many cases successful business owners, they've built their lives up and so forth, and you're conflating them with people who, number one, have nothing, and number two, then you're expecting them to pay for those other people. I think if I were a legal immigrant to the United States, I would feel awfully bad at being so ill-treated by a political movement. You're telling me that I paid tens of thousands of dollars and went through half a decade of rigmarole just to get residency, finally got my green card because I wanted to work in the country, and I've worked my way up, I've got a business or something, I've had kids and shit. You're telling me that of necessity, I have to throw in with somebody who disregarded all of these things completely and simply wandered across the border because they wanted to sell drugs. Well, no, 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 that's not exactly how I would be thinking. I'd be pissed, actually. I'd be pissed at the Democratic Party for suggesting such a thing because I did the effort. They're making no effort. And you're treating us like we're exactly the same simply because of our nation of origin or something like that, or the fact that we were born outside of U.S. borders. Makes absolutely no sense. Somebody who's willing to go through the effort to come to the United States legally and is not doing anything else wrong has my respect. Somebody who simply wanders across the goddamn border, ignoring our laws, and in some cases ends up committing additional crimes, does not have my respect. But the Democrats don't seem to see the difference between these two groups of people. I don't really like grouping people, but you understand there are these two different statuses, basically, legal or illegal immigrant. Democrats just don't get it. Also, the whole BIPOC thing. I don't think that went over very well. I think that you may have noticed that they've generally retired that term. There's a reason for that. I have a feeling it involved a focus group. When you lump in somebody from Nigeria with somebody from Indonesia, knowing that people in other countries tend to have much more ethnic delineation than in the US. The US is much more cosmopolitan than almost any other nation. But if you say broadly European, a lot of people in Europe aren't going to understand what the fuck you're talking about. They say, I'm not European, I'm Belgian or something like that. They have national loyalty. You should see how they treat soccer games, fellow Americans. Or Africa, a Nigerian and somebody from Malawi. They are not the same. In America, they're both just black people, but they don't have that same kind of collective mentality. Somebody from go ahead to Argentina and say, well, you're basically Chilean. You're gonna get decked. Go to go to Vietnam and say, hey, are you Korean? You look Korean to me. Ha ha ha, Asian, Asian. It's not going to work out well for you. And go to Korea and do the same thing and call them Vietnamese, and you probably end up ripped apart in a gutter. Because those people have more of a generally ethnic pride. Americans, especially white Americans, are not allowed to have that. We create different subgroups, so we hyphenated Americans and shit like that to delineate. But that's not what's done in most of the rest of the world. So the Democrats very stupidly blundered into this one because they should have understood in these other cultures, a la immigrants, people coming into the country from various parts of the world, they're not going to understand what the fuck you're saying. And for economic reasons, a lot of these people are successful. They're not the same as Pablo, who just walked across the border with a rucksack and literally nothing else and no shoes on. They don't want to be compared because they're not the same. Unfortunately, the DNC's focus group apparently is filled with short bus idiots. That's about all. Peace out.